Welcome to the MF Show, where we have celebrity interviews. I'm Rich Waiters.
And I'm Jerry Zayden. We're going to talk about hot car topics in the automotive industry and where it takes us.
Today, we've got another Team magnaflow member here with us. We got Brad Coitz, TrailRecon. You might know him from his YouTube channel. But more or less, he's been a magnaflow ambassador here, working with us in the off-road, specifically Jeep, but now expanding into a lot of other vehicles as you've grown your audience and, of course, grown what vehicles you have in the garage. Welcome.
Yeah, it's great to be here talking with you guys. I'm excited to see where this conversation leads us today.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself. I want to know the whole audience wants to know your background, and more importantly, what introduced you to the automotive culture?
Well, let's start with the latter question. I grew up, my dad and grandpa and I would go to car shows anytime there was something in Portland. Like, we were always going to car shows. And I lived and breathed Hot Wheels when I was a kid. That's all I had in my room, and Legos. And so I grew up just loving cars, having a passion for cars. And fast forward to my adult life, obviously, I'm just like, okay, what can I do? What can I buy? What can I, modify? But it all started, I was in the military for 26 years and retired from the military. And the year before I retired, I bought a Jeep. I actually sold a Mustang and bought a Jeep, which was I was like, do I really want to get rid of my hot rod and buy this 4x4? And it ended up being one of the best decisions I've ever made because my sons, but specifically one of my sons, went out and hit the trails the first time, had no idea what we were doing in that Jeep. And we went out and explored and just had the greatest time. And lo and behold, he was filming a little video on his phone that entire day that I wasn't really paying attention because I was so focused on driving off road for the first time, And by the time we got home, he had already edited a video, and I was like, "That's cool. Like, let's do that every time we go out." And it was just kind of like the idea was just like a little video diary for us. And we posted that on our family YouTube channel at the time, which was no intention of doing anything with it, just having it there. And people were searching up and watching it, and I was like, that's a little strange. That wasn't really the intent there. And this was 9 years ago now, which is crazy to think about. But we're like, all right, well, let's see if we can figure out how to make a better video and try to explain more. And honestly, if you don't go back and watch those first videos, they are terrible. They are awful because we had no idea what we were doing. We were just having a good time. And now fast forward 9 years, we've been producing content and trying to inspire folks to get out and have adventures. So yeah, that's life in TrailRecon.
Yeah, sounds really cool. So what was your first vehicle? 16.
I'm going to get in trouble here. So my very first vehicle, I bought before I had my driver's license.
Okay.
Don't do this, kids. But me and a neighbor kid put our money together and bought I think it was like a 74, 76 Nova. It was a beater, and it was a four-door. And we weren't old enough to buy the car, so there was not really
cash.
It was a little under the table. And we parked it down the street. We didn't tell our parents. We parked it down the street, and we would drive that car around, and he ended up wrecking it, and then we both got in trouble. And so that was technically my first car, but my first real car that I actually purchased with my own money and had a license to drive was like an 84 Nissan Sentra. It was not exciting. But I remember, I was modifying it even then. I wanted to make it different, so yeah.
So what were some of those modifications you made to that?
We lowered it. I put a loud exhaust on it, the radio and all that kind of stuff. I didn't have a lot of money when I was a kid, so it was just whatever I could get my hands on to make changes to it. But I've always wanted to tinker with cars. I don't think I've ever left a car alone.
That's the high school fund, right? You just got to look at the equipment that you found on your buddy's leftover project, dig in the parents' garage. God forbid they had a 6x9 speaker that you tossed in the back. I mean, we just did what we had to do with what we had to make it ours. I mean, it wasn't so important that it was this brand, that brand. It was just something to do.
Right. 100%. Yeah. I think that's what I love about the Jeep is there's so many different ways to modify it. And I'm guilty of making modifications to it. And then a year later, I'll take some of those off and change them again because I like to tinker and I like to make it my own, which is cool.
Yeah. So going from The Nissan with the loud exhaust.
Yeah.
Like, how many subwoofers did you have in the trunk?
I actually think I had like a house speaker box back there.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So the garage sale, you got the home 8-ohm speakers
Exactly.
and wired them up in the back seat.
Yep.
So then what got you into off-road?
So I had, when I finally got a job and had good money, I went through a couple hot rods, had some classic cars. But when I had that Mustang, I would go pick my two sons up from football. And they were, there's one was 6'2", the other was 6'4". They're big boys, and they'd get in the car with all their football gear. And I always felt guilty. I'm like, I'm cramming them in this little tiny Mustang. And I told my wife, I was like, as much as I love this hot rod, I think it's time to get something different. And that was why I kind of sold the Mustang and bought a Jeep. And I didn't realize where that path was going to lead me at the time. But yeah.
So what year is this Mustang?
That would have been like a 2012, I think. It was a 5.0 GT,
Okay.
and I had a magnaflow exhaust on it. It was lower. It had different wheels and tires and air intake and all the things.
Okay, so you went from a really cool sporty car into a Jeep JK at the time?
Yeah, it was a Jeep JK Wrangler silver, and it wasn't the most attractive vehicle. You got to make them look good, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what were some of the modifications you made to that first Jeep?
Well, I remember vividly telling my son, I'm like, this is a Rubicon. We don't ever need to make any changes to it. I said those words, not knowing. When we started taking that thing out, we realized, we needed a winch. So we had to figure that out, how to get a bumper and a winch on there. And then we found ourselves out on the trail at night and we realized we needed to have lights. And so, we got some off-road lights. And then as you start doing harder and harder trails, okay, we need to put bigger tires on this thing. We got to lift it. We got to get better suspension. And there was such a learning process I had no idea about. I remember we put some pucks on there and some shock extensions and, really went with the budget suspension, thinking, oh, that's all we need. Now we can put bigger tires on. And we learned some lessons, a lot of lessons. I'm still learning lessons along the way, but yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So, and these are the trails through Portland, or
no?
Where were you at the time?
No, so I retired in 2016 here in San Diego. And when I retired, the boys were in high school. And we're like, we're not moving anymore. So that's why we stayed here in San Diego. And if you love off-roading, this is a great place to be because there's so many trails and so much public land not too far away. So that's just been a nice little benefit of being here.
And that Jeep, how long did you keep it for before it finally changed hands?
I just let it go about 4 months ago. And so we've had that's actually the longest I've ever owned a single vehicle.
I think so.
Yeah, and I told myself I probably wasn't going to get rid of it because I love that we have so many memories in that. But it was just sitting for the last couple of years. We had modified and just done so many things to it. But I feel like the story was kind of done with that. There's a lot of memories, and it was just sitting, and I'd look at it and be like, this just somebody else needs to go enjoy this.
It definitely fit your storyline. Like if you go back and watch those videos you told us not to watch, they were kind of just montages of what you were doing. It was a little behind the scene, a little bit going up the inclines, but you were in a stock Jeep, and you can tell you were just having fun and enjoying nature. And the big part about that was you're with your kids, and you're out there, and actually Regina was in a lot of the videos too, and you were just there enjoying what's going on around you. And I think there's been, as you watch through the progression, there eventually became a point where you were in bigger and bigger groups. Community is a big part of what we do in automotive. And eventually you can kind of see people are asking your opinion on a lot of things. And I think that's where a lot of this kind of maybe stemmed from.
Yeah, that's a good point. The community piece was something that I wasn't aware of at the time. And I remember my son and I were going out. We had a book, and it was a Fun Treks book, and it had all the Southern California trails on it. And so we would just pick a trail. All right, this is the trail we're going to go this weekend. And we were going out. Sometimes we would go out Saturday, Sunday, and we would do that. We were just so passionate about going out every weekend. But one weekend we were going out, and we had stopped on the side of the road. And we watched these 4 or 5 Jeeps go by. And I was like, man, I wonder where they're going, And we were just by ourselves. And they just happened to be about a half mile up the road as we were coming up, and they were pulled over the side. And I told Jordan, and this is something that, I don't know, it's probably not something you'd be comfortable doing, but we're like, I'm just going to pull over and just talk to these guys and see where they're going. And we did. We pulled over and kind of talked to them about the area, and they're like, hey, why don't you come with us today? And I was like, wow, that's so cool that, just like that, and there was an instant bond with these guys. We spent the entire day with them out on the trail and had an amazing experience. And ever since then, I've just realized that this is a community of like-minded people. You can meet somebody with an off-road vehicle, and they're most likely going to have the same passion for adventure, some of the same values that you have, the same kind of attitude, the same spirit, and you're more than likely just going to hit it off. And so that's what I love about this community. And then the family aspect is huge. I wish I could rewind way, way, way back with my kids, because the times that we've had out on the trail, the experiences that we've had, whether it was seeing amazing stuff or it was struggling through something, we have so many incredible memories that we've made, and man, I wish I could rewind in time and start that earlier.
So what do you have now? You have a Jeep, you have a few Jeeps.
So I've thinned the herd a little bit. Yeah, but I have I have the Jeep Gladiator, which we call it Doc, and I just actually got back from the Arctic Ocean. We did a big adventure, a whole month-long trip up there. Got back a couple months ago, so that we've been kind of making some changes to that.
Arctic Ocean. So explain this trip.
So
Let's hear about this.
I have been wanting to go up to the Arctic Ocean for a long time, and we had a trip planned in 2019 that got canceled because of COVID, and just got put off. And finally, I was just like, I'm going. And the Gladiator is, I think, the perfect platform for a trip like that. And so I went up there with my good friend Sean from the Story Till Now, who's also a YouTuber. And we did a 30-day trip all the way up through British Columbia, through the Yukon, through the Northwest Territories, and we made it. Took us, I think we reached the Arctic Ocean on like day 17, and it was still frozen. It was absolutely incredible. But the whole trip up there was it was the trip of a lifetime. I'm working hard now to figure out how I'm going to top that trip.
So how exactly do you get there from here?
So I drove all the way up to the Canadian border into British Columbia, and then we drove all the way through British Columbia, which is absolutely one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. It's incredible. It's like being in the Grand Tetons and Yellowstone, but there's no people around. And there's wildlife everywhere. It's just normal. And there's lakes and rivers and just beautiful. But we drove up through British Columbia, and Sean is Canadian, so he knew a little bit of that. But eventually we drove so far that he had never been that far north. Then we went through the Yukon, which so much history there, from the gold rush days and all that. And that was cool to experience that. We did some gold panning and lots of fishing and stuff. And then eventually you reach the Arctic Circle up in the Northwest Territories, and then we made it all the way up to the Arctic Ocean. Not without some trials and tribulations, but it was an amazing experience, and I would do it all over again in a heartbeat. So
I mean, I'm thinking like you were talking about how difficult it was there for you to get through these places, but I mean, you had places where you went to where you were expecting to get fuel, couldn't find fuel.
Oh, yeah.
And you were finding out that the fuel was coming on the ferry that was not running right there in that time. So you had to plan quite a bit to make sure you weren't, running into these obstacles and just stranded and stuck. How was it, though, when you had that opportunity to meet some of the locals and they actually knew who you were?
Yeah, that was pretty cool. It was interesting to see, somebody coming up. Not so much once we got up to the Northwest Territories, but when we were in like the British Columbia, we would get people that you could see them, and we'd be like at a gas station, and they would drive and turn around and come back because they just wanted to come talk to us because they saw, and we were really pretty remote, so that was really cool to run in to some folks out there and talk to them. But man, everybody says Canadians are really nice, and the truth is they really, really are. Everybody was just so friendly, wanted to have a conversation about where we were going. You're these two big, massive built trucks, we're taking through these small little towns, and they just want to come up and talk to you. When we arrived to Tuktoyaktuk, which is the small village that's on the Arctic Ocean, which is where we camped, We arrived there, it was like 11 o'clock at night, although it was still daylight out, and there were kids playing out in the streets. But we were the first outsiders to reach their town in like 3 months because the ferries hadn't been running because the rivers were still frozen. And so anyway, we almost didn't make it. So that we were the first people they had seen in a long time. So everybody was out there just talking to us and telling us about the town and the village. It was an incredible experience. Yeah.
That's amazing. So yeah, one of my questions was going to be, what was your most challenging trip? Was this your most challenging?
Ooh.
Because I know like sometimes the shortest trips could be the most challenging, but this is obviously a month-long journey.
I don't know that it was the most challenging. I mean, there were challenges along the way, but I don't know if it was the most challenging. I think some of the most challenging trips have been the ones with weather and vehicle breakdowns, and we only had a little bit of that. There's actually most of the challenges were pretty easy to overcome. There's been times when we've just like packed up camp and at like 1 o'clock in the morning because the wind is like 55 miles an hour. We're like, we're out, you know? So that wasn't the most challenging.
And on this trip you were on, how much of it was off-road?
Not much of it, honest. Well, I take that back. We did do some off-roading on the way up there, places that Sean knew, but a lot of it is driving. But what we would do is we would drive to a certain area, and then we would hit the dirt and go look for camp or go look for a lake. And so we tried to get in as much dirt as we could. But then when you reach Dawson City, from that point all the way up until you reach Tuktoyaktuk, it's all a dirt road. It's 460 some miles of just dirt road. And some of it is well groomed and some of it is not. Some of it is washed out, you know, and so, yeah, it was a lot of, my truck has never been dirtier, ever.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're still washing that stuff
You're still
off
washing that stuff off there. I guarantee there's some silt underneath.
So any run-ins with bears or big wildlife?
Yeah, we saw lots and lots of wildlife. It's everywhere. But there's two memories that I will never forget on this trip. One was we were camped on this beautiful lake that we had found, and that morning as we were packing up and leaving, we were about 100 yards from camp, and these two bear grizzly cubs are standing right in the middle of the trail that we're just getting ready to drive on, 100 yards from where we're camping. And all I could think was, their mother is around here somewhere, and we were camping right next to them. That's terrifying to think about. But we didn't have any, like, you know, we didn't get attacked or anything like that. But there was one night, and we weren't filming this. This was actually on the way home. We were having a hard time finding a camp spot. And so we were doing a lot of exploring, and there was a lot of down this trail and turn around and come back. And it was about 9:30 at night, and it's like golden hour because, you know, the sun's still up. But there was nobody on the road. I mean, we probably didn't see anybody for an hour on the road. But the animals just started coming out, and elk and caribou and bear and moose and porcupine, and just, it was like being on an Alaskan safari. We weren't in Alaska, but it was like being on a safari. And we were like little kids. We were literally driving like 10 miles an hour on the Alaska
just
highway. We were just like, look at that. Do you see that moose? You see the antlers on that thing?
That's
the caribou. Cool. It was incredible. So, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, on the local trails, you know, you might see a brown bear, you see some deer, a couple coyotes, which is really cool to see because it's pretty rare, right? But when you're up there and it's just like you're in a zoo.
Yeah. I think we counted 22 bear we saw in one day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a lot. And they're big. They're not like the little tiny little California black bears. They're big bears.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
Did you bring anything to defend yourself with just in case?
That's a good question. So to go to Canada, there's a process you have to go through to bring a firearm with you. And I was gonna do that, but I didn't. I procrastinated, and I didn't get the paperwork submitted, and I didn't do it. So I had bear spray with me, which would have, you know, they wouldn't have. They would have just
keep eating you.
Bear spray, whatever. So Sean, thankfully, he lives there, so he has a hunting rifle that he brought with him. But to do it again, now knowing what I know now, I will get the paperwork done next time.
That's always one of my fears, like camping out, and that's going to lead into this next question. Is like, I've personally been trying every which way to sleep, right? The GFC on top of the vehicle, the pop-up tents before the GFC, setting up a cot outside the vehicle with a tent on top of the cot to stay off the ground, sleeping on the ground. And now I'm like, in the back of my truck on a mattress because I'm just going light and comfortable.
Yeah.
So for you, like, what are your favorite ways to set up camp and sleep? Are you setting up a tent? Is it a pop-up on top? What do you got going on?
All of the above. I still have a variety, and I can't say that I love one more than the other because honestly, I think it just depends on the situation. But I do tell people that the best money you can spend on your overland gear is your sleeping gear. You need a good sleeping pad, you need a good warm sleeping bag, and a good pillow because there's nothing better than a good night's rest. Because if you don't get a good night's rest and you got to put another 8 to 12 hours a day on the trail, it's a rough day. So. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like the camping thing for me. We used to do adventure motorcycle riding. So there is no pop-up tent. So it's like, and everything's really little to fit in the pannier bags, right? So since then, we've been doing the vehicles, which has been kind of more like glamping.
Right.
And like I said, having a GFC up on top and like the materials they're made out of, it's good for like warmer conditions unless you have some kind of heater or something. What is your favorite setup for camping? Like, what would your go-to be if it's all about... Because we have space in our vehicles, right? Like, it's limited, but, you know, you can get the Walmart $45 plug into the... Most vehicles have a 110 socket now, so you can have like a twin bed, right? Or you have the little air mattress you got to kind of pump up like you're giving someone CPR. Like, what's your favorite setup?
I don't know if I have a favorite setup. I'd have a favorite setup when my wife's with me. Does that count?
Yeah, because
Yes, Regina does have her
she's got to be
demands.
comfortable.
Yes.
So we actually have a Sprinter van that we've been kind of modifying and building out, and actually it's way more capable than I ever thought it was going to be. And that thing's got a full-size queen bed in the back, and that's comfortable for the two of us. But honestly, I still don't mind sleeping on the ground in a tent as long as I've got a good warm sleeping bag and a good sleeping pad. I'm pretty happy. You know, the rooftop tents are nice. There's just some pros and cons to having a rooftop tent. I actually don't even. I have one now, but I don't know if I'll continue to have a rooftop tent for much longer. So
I got lucky in college. It was one of those things where I learned how to sleep on a sofa, on a floor, upside down, with 10 people's garments thrown on top of me in the corner. So comfort was not a big deal. But like to your point, having the right gear is really important, especially for that sleep factor, because you wake up the next day and you're not ready to go on the trail. It's just, it tries everything, makes everything more difficult. And all you want to do is go find another comfortable place to sleep. But today it's cool. We have a lot of gear out there and you can kind of pick and choose to get to what's most comfortable for you. But there are those times I just like to toss down the tent and lose the 200 pounds of gear on the roof and go out and just make it easy.
Yeah, for sure. When we started, I remember the very first time that my son and I camped out of the Jeep, and we just brought our hiking gear, and just a super thin little sleeping mat, and it's a funny story. We ended up not camping that night because we got destroyed by the wind and ended up going home. Surprising that we ever decided to go back out and do it again. But that's all we started with in the beginning was our hiking gear, and we realized, okay, we can do better than this as we went along. So
yeah, and that was my thing with the adventure motorcycles, right? We had ththese KTM 1190Rs, the Moscow panniers, and then it was Nemo. So I had a little mini 2-person. They call it a 2-person, but it's really like not even one of me that could fit in it with the thin pads. And I was like, people really do this for like a week straight. Like, this is horrible, right? So I could deal with it at night, but you're tossing and turning and the thing's crunching. So with the trucks, we've been trying out like all the gear, and then it gets cold and you double sleeping bag up because you want to be warm. And we got into these Amazon Teton Sports giant cots that they attack you when you set them up because of the way they fold out and they weigh like 40 pounds. They're like metal heavy things. But they're really comfortable. And then you can put a tent on top. So like for all the warm weather, those have been great. But the sleeping bag that I'm using now, I'm going to ask you what you use next, but we went on like Cabela's and got the negative 30 degree canvas, fleece line, super comfortable. Yeah. And I absolutely love that thing. It keeps me super warm. But it's big and bulky. And they even sell the pad that would go with that thing on top of whatever you do. So what are you using when it's cold?
So I have a negative 15 degree down sleeping bag, and I used to just go buy whatever sleeping bag and just take it, synthetic or whatever. And then there was one time we were up in the mountains, and I literally just froze my tail off that night, and I was like, that's never going to happen again. And I invested in a down sleeping bag, which I thought, all right, this is a lot of money for a sleeping bag. It's probably not worth it. And I won't use anything else anymore because it's so warm, but it's also so light on you.
Yeah.
You just feel like you don't feel like you're cocooned, It just feels like really comfortable. So I have a minus 15 degree that I use for the wintertime.
Like a bigger mummy bag style?
Yeah. It's pretty large. And then I just have a little summer bag that I use.
Is there like certain brands out there that you have tested out and tried?
I'm not a brand snob when it comes to sleeping bags. No, I don't even know if I can tell you the brand of my sleeping bag.
No, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, because I know there's like different brands. They have like different styles of kind of how they set up sleeping. And that's, to me, like you said, it's like the most important thing, right? Like, because if you're not getting good sleep, then you're going to be miserable the next day or tired or grumpy, whatever. And it becomes dangerous if you're tired, especially some of these like cliffy focused trails. Like I've raced Baja in a trophy truck. I've raced the mid 400 in the trophy truck or unlimited truck and the stock mini. Like you're focused.
Yeah.
Well, when you're on a road that's like 3 miles long and it's like a huge giant cliff to your left,
Right.
I've never been more white knuckled than that. So I wouldn't want to be tired and fatigued dealing with that stuff.
Agreed.
Right?
I agree.
Because you don't want to rush through it. So yeah, to me, sleeping's a huge one. Now, what about food preservation, right? So are you using a refrigerator? Are you doing coolers?
So I started out with coolers because I thought, why do I need a $700 refrigerator at the time? I was like, why would I pay that much money for it? And then as you do this, as we were doing it so often, having a soggy sandwich or having to worry about ice after several days. And I was like, all right, I'm going to make this investment. At the time, I think it was like, I don't think you can buy a fridge for $700 now. No. Probably not. But I remember I was like, I told my wife, I'm like, I'm going to spend $700 for this fridge. Let's see how this goes. I would never go back to a cooler. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a cooler. It's great for a weekend. And it's just, if you're going to do this all the time, having a 12-volt fridge is the way to go, and not having to worry about ice and being able to adjust the temperature and all the things. So it's one of those things worth investing in if you're going to do this a lot.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about the refrigerator freezer was the fact that you could bring ice cream for dessert.
Yeah.
That was the first time I go, watch this. I'm going to make everyone jealous.
More and more of the vehicles are equipped with the 12-volt sources, so you can do this.
Yeah.
They have inverters for the ones that take really high amperage, but overall the vehicles are more ready and available for those things that kind of support we call it glamping now, but the more comfortable camping that's out there.
Yeah, I've killed more than one battery with a refrigerator, but that's a lesson I learned and I won't do it again. So
we got solar out there too, remember?
Yeah.
Are you running solar?
I bring a solar panel with me, but usually we're not in a place long enough to worry about it. Usually we're running, we'll stay one night and then we're charging all day when we're driving. So it's usually not an issue for us.
So are you bringing Starlink with you as well?
I do have Starlink. In fact, I just upgraded to the Starlink Mini, and I know there's a lot of people that have a negative, don't do that. You need to be disconnected. And yeah, you need to be disconnected, but you also need to be safe, right? You need to be able to contact somebody if there's an emergency, and for doing what I do, creating content and having to be in contact with so many different people all the time, but wanting to be out there, this allows me to do that. Having the ability to be gone for an entire month to the Arctic Ocean, but I could still communicate with everybody is nice. So I'm a proponent of Starlink. And then Mini doesn't use as much power. Right. So.
And does the Mini work as well?
Yeah, it works great. Okay. I didn't have any problems with it. So I think and it's so compact and small. It's really nice.
Yeah. I wound up doing a Starlink and then putting it in a star mount systems. Mm-hmm. And then that's just like, put it up on the roof or set it up, but it's kind of cool when you could just drive down the road,
right?
And the people in front of you and behind you, they're also connected to it as you're driving. So we're in Baja. I'm a avid fan of this thing.
Yeah, I love the hard mounted Starlinks, and I thought about doing that 100 times, but I have so many different vehicles, and I'm guilty of changing out vehicles so often. I'm like, I need to have the thing just be mobile, so I just carry it in a little briefcase.
So does the Mini just hook up on the roof and you're driving down the street, or do you have to hook it up when you're stopped?
Well, no, it will work while you're driving. In fact, in the van, we'll just put it in the window because the window's so big and the dash is so massive. We'll just put it. It works right in there. So,
okay, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, and when you're talking about the different vehicles, obviously, you talked a little bit about it. You've got the van, you've got a couple of Jeeps still in the family stable. Right. More recently than not, you've kind of delved into the Toyota world. And We're currently working with you on that new Land Cruiser project. But what are your thoughts now of like going away from that solid axle to now an independent and having to dual roll the vehicle? These aren't purpose only off-road vehicles.
Yeah. So we bought my son a Tacoma a couple of years ago, and that was really for him. And we had all these ideas and plans of what we were going to do with it. But I told him in the beginning, this is your truck, so you got to do it. And he's just been so busy with school and work and his girlfriend and life that's been a slow evolution. And so I've just been focused on the Jeeps, plural. But I wanted to do something different because I feel like I've modified several Jeeps over the years. I wanted to do something a little different, and the new Land Cruiser just kind of excited me a little bit. Also, the Ineos Grenadier. I got to be honest, I was kind of going back and forth between those two vehicles. But after I test drove the Land Cruiser, I was like, nah, this thing has potential. One, it's really comfortable for long trips and a daily driver. Plus, it's a hybrid, so it gets pretty good fuel economy. And it's something new and fresh. And so I'm kind of like excited and reinvigorated to do something new and not kind of like, all right, I'm doing another Jeep. I wanted to do something different. And surprisingly, all my audience isn't like abandoning me because I'm not driving a Jeep, which is good, thankfully.
And so when you hit on gas mileages, that's to me very critical, right? So I have a Raptor because they hold close to 30 gallons of fuel. Yeah. And gets about 11, 12 miles of the gallon when you're going off-road. You know, on the highway, you might hit 14.
Right.
But the range is big because it holds fuel. How many gallons is this Land Cruiser, and what's your fuel mileage you're seeing in it?
So the gas tank is small. It's only 17.9, right, as opposed to the Jeep where it's about 21. So it's a little, you lose a little bit. But the fuel economy on road, depending on what tires I have it on, I'm doing the tire experiment now. I've actually just changed tires again. But if I don't have a big, heavy meat mud terrain on there, I can get anywhere from 21 to 24 miles to the gallon on road. Off road, it's well above 15. So, you know, it's a smaller tank, but I'm getting better range. My Jeep doesn't get anywhere near those numbers, right? So
single digits.
Yeah. When I went up to the Arctic Ocean, I took 20 extra gallons of fuel with me. This I will have to take, you know, some extra fuel with me just because.
What size tires are you running right now?
Right now it's just a 33, but we're gonna bump it up here to a 35.
We're gonna fix that.
We
have some parts here for you.
I can't wait to see. Yeah.
So let's hear some of these plans on this Land Cruiser, because I'm eyeing the Land Cruiser.
Oh,
These
yeah.
things are badass. I was looking at the Lexus GX 550.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the Land Cruiser. I like the way the Land Cruiser looks, right?
Yeah.
So what are these mods?
Well, so far it's been pretty mild because I'm kind of doing the kind of wait and see a little bit because a lot of people are starting to come out with bumpers, and so I want to figure out which one I want. I don't want to just get the first one that comes to market. But we did pull out the rear seats, and Goose Gear did an amazing job outfitting the rear, and I can sleep inside.
Okay.
And I have more storage in the back of that thing than I've ever had in any vehicle.
You're like 6'2", 6'3", right?
Oh yeah, the sleeping platform that he built on there will accommodate somebody up to 7 feet. It's crazy.
So there's that much room in the new Land Cruiser.
That much room when you pull the rear seats out.
Yeah, so back to the sleeping. So in my Raptor, this is important to me. This is like the most important part because we'll go for a week, right? And you want to be comfortable. So my Raptor's got 5.5 foot bed, and I have a smart cap on the back, but I did the carpet liner.
Yeah.
So I think it's called bed rug.
Yeah.
And it's padded. And then I went to Walmart, don't laugh, but for $45, you get a twin mattress that you plug in the bed of the truck. It pumps up, or if you reverse it, it sucks all the air out. So I could set up and get both directions in under a minute. Like it's really fast.
Right.
And if it's raining and cold, I'd be very tucked up because the tailgate's down, the mattress is down, the back window's closed, my feet hang out past the window, so I can't be in it. But you're saying in the Land Cruiser, you can fit completely in it.
Yeah, in the way that it's outfitted right now, I can sleep in there. Now it's just one. We could have made it a two-person, but I figured it.
So you did the narrower Goose Gear.
Well, so one side is the whole side where you can sleep. So it's a big platform with drawers and cabinets, and the other side. There's actually a drawer fridge, but then there's a little cubby where I can kind of put my camera gear, drones, and all that kind of stuff. So it just made a little more sense. But it's a great. I actually haven't slept in it overnight yet.
Okay.
But I'm excited to do that because the Land Cruiser is a hybrid. If I want to turn the heat on or the AC on,
you can do that.
I can do that. So
with that, like you could set it to 68 degrees and all night long.
I don't know all night long, but you could do it you could do it a little bit here and there. Because I think that what happens is eventually the engine will turn on.
God, so it'll shut off.
Yeah,
or-
but you could, I guess you could leave it on. I think it'll allow you to do that, but I wouldn't
Interesting.
want to do that. But yeah,
That's pretty neat.
Well, what's the other part too now? I've been watching and keeping up induction cooking now instead
Yeah.
of fire. That's a thing that you brought up is another add-on
Well,
because all
Richard,
these
you and I
vehicles.
talked induction
I know.
on the last trip because all the vehicles are coming with like 400 watts or more built into them. My Raptor's got 2,000 kW built
Yeah.
in the back. You press the button and it jumps up. I learned about induction because my new house, or my old house, I should say, is all electric.
Yeah.
And so I had to buy a full induction stove, and I can't believe how great this thing cooks. Like, it's way better than gas. And so,
Those windy camping nights, trying to keep that fire stoked and
or you hook up the fuel and it's half empty, or it
Yeah.
is empty and you're just out of it. But the induction, have you done that on the trail yet?
oh yeah, it's Sam Rough
Yeah.
Racks. He's tried so many different kitchen arrangements, and we're always looking for the best one to create fire. And there's a few that we've played with that were induction, and it's like you can't beat the fact that you just don't have to worry about the wind and air, and it gets hot so fast, boils
Instantly.
water.
Yeah.
The only thing we just have to be worried about is power, and that's
Yeah.
the one thing you got to keep on preserve. But I noticed that was the newest thing that you added on to kind of your list of new things,
Yeah.
and I think that's probably the coolest thing on watching your channel is you've got like your old loadout, and then you had your let's go tent camping loadout, and then now you've got your kind of minimized, comfortable inside with all the electric amenities, and you can kind of see all the different phases you've gone through.
Yeah.
Where do you think? Do you still like to go back to the old backpacking, or are you kind of like bought in on the tech and the new thing?
I'm getting a little older these days, so I like to be a little more comfortable, have a little more of the tech. But I don't mind sleeping on the ground and bringing an old propane stove. But to your point about induction cooking, the van didn't have propane when we got it. It was all electric, and that was my first experience doing it. I knew about induction, but I never used it. And after we had done that for a while, I was like, I need to figure out how to do this. And so the whole Arctic trip, that's all I used. So
Okay.
for an entire month, all I did was cook on an induction stove, and it worked flawlessly the entire time. And not once did I have to worry about filling up a propane tank.
Yeah, so for people out there, what induction is, if you haven't heard of it, it's actually an older technology. And your pans have to be magnetic, which most new pans in the market work for everything. And it's using the electric energy in a very quick magnetic way to just screw with the molecules of the pan to create heat.
Yeah.
So it's basically science on a glass top, but there's no flame, there's no heat with it other than the heat that's coming from
The two.
the pan that you're cooking with. And so I don't know how it is on the trail because this is something I want to research, or you guys have researched it, so I'll just ask you what to buy. But at home, I could boil a huge pot of water in like 45 seconds. Like, it's very quick. On the trail, being hooked up to 12 volt, or I guess you're still on 110 with the generator.
Yeah.
How fast are you boiling a pot of water to cook, say, macaroni and cheese?
Pretty quick.
It just depends on what induction stove you're
But like
using.
a minute?
2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
You can be
Okay, so
boiling
it's a
water.
little slower, obviously, than a
It's your
220
power
plug at
source.
home.
Yeah, when you got 220 and you've got that kind of amperage, different animal than
Yeah.
draining your battery. Because that's the other thing too is like even though you might have the 12 volt source, what is your battery discharge rate? Now we're getting into AGM batteries and
Yeah.
lithium stuff and all the cool stuff that's out there. Most of the tech though isn't being taken advantage of by all the burners. So finding the right burner for what your utility is really the key.
So for all the camping supply companies out there, pay attention to this podcast and make some really good gear because we really want it. And then I want to hit back on the goose gear. So
Yeah.
I've had goose gear a couple times now, and I know you have as well, Richard.
Yeah.
Brian, the owner of Goose Gear, used to be right down the street from
Yeah.
Huntington High School, and it's funny because like both of our kids went to the same school,
Yeah.
and it's like, no way, your kids. It was great, and he's like one of the nicest guys. But I built out this Raptor, the first overland vehicle, GFC, full Goose Gear, taking up the whole bed, sliding drawers, and the whole thing. It was awesome. But it wasn't the everyday thing, and that's what set me down this minimalistic path of comfort
Yeah.
and true setup. And I think we're all kind of getting to the same thing. Like the first overland show we did, I just started like, hey, we came up with the term overloading and pre-landing.
Yeah.
So taking the high performance suspension overland, like a pre-runner, but pre-landing. I think Jason's son Corey termed that on one trip we were on. So, the suspension's critical, important to be more comfortable. It's not just for going fast or jumping, right? So what are your suspension mods you're wanting to do to this Land Cruiser?
Well, one, the Land Cruiser is very low to the ground, so we need to get it up in the air because it's too low to the ground from the factory. So definitely want to lift it, and then comfort out on the trail is important to me. I don't have a light foot, so even when we're many miles on the trail, I still like to get after it a little bit and have fun. This isn't going to be a rock crawler, but it needs to be able to handle the weight and get up and go a little bit, which I don't think will be a problem.
Yeah, we definitely kept that in consideration on your build list. And like I said, today will be an interesting one because you'll take home a few extra parts. We've got King just came out with their recent coilover setup for that. And we have one of their first release products for that. So we'll be able to get your adjustable ride height.
Yeah.
So you can play with your tires and sizes and get to where you need to be to get that right economy and feel. But then again, we got all the camber parts too. And you're going to have, I believe it's going to be the first run of the new trailing arms. There was a little bit of difference between the suspension. The geometry remains very similar between that and the Tacoma, right? They're
Very similar platform as also the
4Runner.
The 4Runner
Right.
that's coming out, the new 4Runner,
Right.
and I would definitely get the Land Cruiser over the new 4Runner. So,
But we had to make some tweaks because the I-beam setup that we have on the rear trailing arms, we had to make some proper clearances. So you're going to get the first one that's going to have that new adjustment into it. So we'll have some new parts to get you into that a little bit more ground clearance and a little bit more strength in that because the upper control arms and the billet pieces for the rear, it's going to give you that strength, durability, and things you just don't have to worry about.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exciting. I can't wait.
so wait, so am I hearing this right? You're going to be on King shocks and cambered suspension.
Yeah, that's the plan.
This is the same guy I talked to at Tech Center that's got his Jeep, and you're like, the suspension's pretty mild. That's all I need. And now you're getting like the very best on the market. This Land Cruiser is going to be awesome.
It's gonna be a great. I think I want this thing to be kind of the ultimate like single person vehicle for me. I want to Regina will join me with this thing, but we'll probably tow the trailer. Not going to sleep in there, right? So we'll bring all the other stuff. But I want this thing to be outfitted unlike any other vehicle that I've had before. I mean, you can make a Jeep go fast, but I think we can have some fun with this thing a little bit. Put a little bit bigger tire on it. Do some exterior mods and bring some extra fuel because we're going to need that.
So that's another point. So when you're out there, I know when we go out with a big group, it's usually a lot of like Raptor, Tundra, a couple Jeep people. Most people are just by themselves in the vehicle. Very rarely is there even a passenger. Or is that kind of how it is with you and your crew?
Typically, my wife sometimes will come with me depending on what's going on. My sons, not so much anymore now that they're young men and adults and have real lives. I still enjoy it when they come, but when they come, they usually want to drive something, so that they're not usually passengers anymore. These days I'm a little more solo than I'd like to be. Yeah.
Yeah, which I find pretty typical in the overland space, right? So it's
Everybody wants a steering wheel in their hand.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
On the side of kind of where things have kind of gone differently inside of like what you've done with the audience, I think it's been very interesting to watch as you've kind of moved on to not just documenting trails, because I mean, you go back far enough and that's kind of what you were doing is just talking about this trail and this is how you get through this trail. And you incorporate a lot of the hiking elements too, but you really kind of got more into how the small changes you did affected your, I guess, overall use of the vehicle. And you really kind of tune in on something now that is you've actually found that certain vehicles have better utility on certain types of things. And I think that's an interesting conversation because you've sat in enough seats now and you've had enough diversity moving away from just exclusively like the Jeep market. And you've been through enough with, having the family members come along and comfort levels to going out on your own, exploring for 30 days in the Arctic. Where do you find that the average person who wants to get out, go camping, and enjoy a vehicle, what do you think are some like the key things that they kind of need to prepare themselves for? I know you said sleep gear, but what kind of vehicle preparations do you think they really need to make?
Wow, that's a good question. I think something that folks need to really think about before they go and do anything is what's their objective.
Right.
Do they want to go do hard trails? Do they want to do medium trails? Do they just want to go see some scenery and enjoy things? How many days do they want to go out? I mean, there's a lot of variables that go into this. But I think sometimes people get in the mode where they think they need to do all these things to their vehicle and they need to buy all these pieces of gear before they go do it. And I would say if you have a capable 4x4 and you've got the basics, just get out and go And then you're going to figure out like, okay, I didn't sleep well that night, or, I didn't like having a cooler. I want a refrigerator, or I need bigger tires so I can go be a little more comfortable on some obstacles,
terrain, yeah.
right? And so I think it really, the great thing about this community, the off-road and overland community is you can kind of tailor it for yourself. There's
right.
so many ways to do that. And I think that's kind of what folks need to do is they need to figure it out. Don't go buy all the things, because what you might find is I didn't need that thing. I wanted this thing. Just
right.
get out there and go use your stuff and then go from there.
And to your point, it's a lot about community.
Yeah.
And you need to go out there and talk to other people, because you can make a lot of wrong decisions, just like going down the wrong path on a trail, if you haven't spoke to the people to find more information. And that's really something that we wanted to do here with this conversation, is kind of bring some of those experiences out for the people out there that are doing this for the first time, second time, or maybe have gone down the wrong path to seek out where they need to go to get more information.
Yeah. One of the best things that we did when we early on was we went out with the San Diego Jeep Club. And it's a great community of people that really, they're not trying to go, do hardcore trails. The goal is just to kind of go out and get familiar with your vehicle and explore new places. And we learned so much in those early days from the people in that group. That we, even today, I still go out with those guys a couple times a year. But finding a community that you can kind of attach to, finding the right kind of folks. It goes back to what we started in the beginning. There's like-minded folks like you out there. You just need to do a little work and find them, and I guarantee you're going to learn a ton about places to go, do's and don'ts out on the trail and out on the adventure, and to do with your vehicle. There's a great community out there. You just got to do a little homework to go find them.
Yeah, so this is kind of hitting on this next question. I think you got about halfway of it, but what advice would you give to people just starting out? So I guess some basics like sleeping gear, setup. Obviously, it's terrain dependent. Like if you live up in, Montana and it's, hitting on winter times can be different than the Southern California desert. But what beginner advice, like great advice that you've lived and learned that you can now give people the basics?
I don't think your off-road vehicle should hit the trail without recovery gear, without a first aid kit, without a fire extinguisher, without some basic tools, and without a seatbelt cutter. Those 5 things every vehicle should have before it hits the trail. But here's the problem. It's not enough to have those gear. You need to know how to use that gear. You need to know how to use that recovery gear. You need to know what's in that first aid kit and how to use it. So every vehicle needs to have that. And then you just need the basics. And whether you go down to Walmart or you pull it out of your attic or whatever, you need a sleeping system, you need some kind of shelter, and you need some way to cook. And you can bring, dehydrated meals if you want. But you just need the basics from there. So
You can get a little out of hand. You've seen my Jeep and the cubby holes full of stuff, but I think there's a nice balance between what you need and having the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
But I think that's something that's interesting that you've kind of brought light to, was I think the first aid part too. And I'm guilty. I don't know how many times I've gone out camping and just winged it and not had something simple, got a fish hook caught my finger, and just realized, well, crap, I don't have anything here. I got some pliers that are pretty dirty I used for fixing my vehicle, but I had nothing to fix myself out in the field. And I know with your background, especially in the medic field, it's something that not only having the gear, but learning where to use it and how to use it. Do you have any recommendations for people on how to get more educated on that world?
Yeah, it's extremely easy. You can go onto the American Red Cross's website, and they have online classes. I've actually done them because I wanted to see before I recommended them. I've done several of their classes online. It's like $25, and you can go through a basic 101 class. You can go through some trauma bleeding classes. There's a CPR class you can do on there. It's very worthwhile. And then you just need to get a first aid kit, and you need to open it up, and you need to see what's in there, because the first time that you're opening up a first aid kit shouldn't be in an emergency, right? And I think unfortunately that's it. And I was, that's what I did in the Navy for 26 years was medical. So this is near and dear to my heart. But this applies to every piece of gear in your vehicle. You need to have that training. Like recovery is another important one, right? Like there's a lot of wrong ways to use a winch and use a tow strap, and you need to make sure that you have some knowledge on how to do that stuff before you hit the trail. So you got to have the gear, but you got to have the training.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I've seen a lot of really, really close call and not so close calls with toe strap usage being wrong. Like I'm an advocate of the speed strap personally. I think it's great. But man, when those things snap, that other end's coming right at you at a very high velocity. I've seen winches get used improperly, so it could get real sketchy out there for sure.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time before you're going to have to open your first aid kit or you're going to have to open recovery. If you do this enough, one of those two things is going to get used eventually. So,
Yeah.
yep.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned your passion inside of your service with the Navy. I think it's also interesting that it wasn't until this last build that we just worked on you with, the Gladiator, where we really got to see you bring that aspect of your life out for your audience. It's a totally different build in the sense that you're not just making it to be capable off-road, but you had a whole different theme for it. Maybe give us a little bit more information on what your idea was behind that.
Yeah, so having been medical in the Navy for 26 years and having deployed and being in ships and with the Marines and at hospitals, there's just so many different people out in the military that are doing so many great things that I got to work with during that time. And I wanted to do something a little different. I talk about my military career a little bit here and there, but most of the time we're just talking about off-road adventures.
Right.
And this Gladiator, I wanted to do something a little more focused on a little tribute to the military. And so this is what's called the Trail Aid Station, and named it Doc. And the goal is to really just bring awareness to first aid, the importance of first aid out on the trail, but also to kind of pay homage to all my military brothers and sisters out there that are doing amazing work. And that was kind of the idea of the Trail Aid Station. And so far, so good. It seems to be well received.
Well, brothers, sisters, wife, sons.
Oh, yeah, right. My son was a corpsman in the Navy. My wife, we met when she was active duty in the Navy. And so, yeah, we have a lot of service in the family also.
So what exactly did you do in the military?
Okay, interesting. When I first joined the military, I was a boiler technician. And so I worked down in the boiler room of a cruiser. And it was fascinating work. I actually learned a lot about steam systems and pumps and boilers, and it was really interesting. But it is hard and it is hot working down in that boiler room. And every night I would somehow, I don't even remember how it happened, but I would spend a little bit of time in the medical department, and the independent duty corpsman up there would give me something to read while I was there or teach me something. And so we kind of built this relationship, and eventually I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to do his job. And eventually, I was able to achieve that. So I just transitioned from being a boiler technician. I went to what's called corpsman school, which is a medical school, and from there I worked in a hospital. I worked in emergency rooms. I deployed with the Marines. I did a deployment to Fallujah, Iraq. I did some incredible humanitarian work all over the world, which was some of the most amazing things I've ever done. I served on several ships. I spent way too much time away from home, away from my kids. Again, I wish I could go back and get some of that time back and do a little bit of overlanding to make up for it. But we've built some good bonds then. But my career was incredible. It was very thankful for having served 26 years.
But how is overlanding and what you're doing now, how is that affecting your family today?
I would say it's changed our lives in a positive way. And he won't mind me saying this. My oldest son, Devin, he and I were at odds during his teenage years. Like we really kind of struggled with getting along with each other, and we decided after he graduated high school we were going to take a trip, and we took a 10-day trip together, and it absolutely transformed our relationship that has been everlasting ever since. We bonded in a way we had never bonded before, and that was incredible. And now when you go out and you spend time like that with your kid, when you're having great experiences and you're having challenges, and maybe you didn't get a very good night's sleep, or the weather, you suffered through some weather together, it brings you closer together when you do those things. And I've had those experiences with all my sons, but that one with my son, that one trip with Devin was transformational for both of us. We look back on that all the time, and we're just so thankful we did that trip together. Because now, since then, he and I have done many trips together, and we talk about doing futures. And my other sons, they still love coming out with me. My wife as well. She wasn't sure about the whole overlanding thing. She likes going exploring. She loves nature. She loves camping. But when I figured out I'm going to make her comfortable, and she loves coming out on these trips. She loves the cooking aspect. She loves going and see these incredible places. She's just got to have a little bit of privacy in the restroom and the hygiene and all that stuff. That's important to her. I could be dirty and not shower for a couple weeks, whatever. She's not going to do that. Don't force your wives to do that. And we've had some really special moments together doing that. But what else is special about all that is, not only has it been transformational for us, but we've seen that in filming what we've done, we've had an impact on other people's lives, which is really amazing. We've somehow inspired other people to want to do the same thing, and that's what we want to continue to do. We want to continue to film our adventures and provide some knowledge, and hopefully somebody else can experience, the same experiences me and my sons have had, or my wife and I have had, because I just want everybody to have those amazing memories.
Yeah, that's absolutely awesome.
Well, it's been a really good time here to kind of understand a little bit more about what's been going on in your life and how that's kind of affected all the things that you've done in your YouTube channel. But there's one last thing, and I think this is going to be probably one of the coolest things that I think happens when you get a little notoriety out there. What's it like when you have the OEMs calling you to come be a part of what their programs are? When you now have gone from just doing your own thing, sharing your own thing, to now having people invite you to come out and hey, here's our new prototype Jeep. What do you think, Brad?
Yeah, my son and I, Jordan, the one that helped me film that very first, he didn't help me film, he filmed that very first video. We giggle about that all the time. Honestly, we're like, we get to go hang out with Jeep today and drive some of their cool concept vehicles. It's honestly very humbling, the fact that we didn't, it wasn't our goal was to do any of this. But the fact that we're, one of the highlights of doing this was being able to go and film the factory where they build the Jeep Wrangler, and that's not something that a lot of people do. Yeah. And I had exclusive access to be able to go do that. And the whole time I'm there, I'm working because I'm trying to film and do this video, but I'm just I'm just giggling and laughing inside. I'm like, I can't believe this is where I'm at right now, because my son and I would sit on the couch and we would watch that show, How It's Made. And here I was filming a How It's Made episode for TrailRecon, which was super cool. So it's very humbling. It's an honor to work with you guys, honestly, with everybody, because there's so many great people in the off-road and the overland community. It's not just the people that are out on the trails. It's guys like you that not only do you create great products that we get to use, but you're out here with us using them. I mean, you spent time with you guys on the trails. It's great. And so I think everybody in this community is amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, I know, Jerry. We got to get the keys of the 392 with the new prototype Jeep exhaust. I don't think he's driven a Jeep that's been as well tuned. And I almost think we got to get Jason, who's really the brains behind it all, to let him know what he can do with that car, because the new 392 Jeep with all the new Camberg suspension on there and the way it's dialed in, not only is it going to make great content for you, but I think it's going to put a grin on your face that you just didn't expect you can get out of a late model Jeep. So,
yeah, it's funny because Jason Campbell, he is not a Jeep fan. He's just Jason. And when they were out in Johnson Valley testing our new race shocks, and he took the Jeep for a spin, came back, turned the tubes a little bit, and came back and goes, "This thing works way better than my Bronco Raptor." He was stoked on that Jeep, which is pretty cool, right? And it's I never in a million years thought he was going to be into this Jeep thing. And he's like, I got some ideas for straight axle vehicles. Stay tuned. He is so pumped on it. So it's going to be cool to hear what you think.
Yeah, I'm excited. I would love to take that thing out and test it. It looks like an animal, and if it goes fast, I'm in. Let's do it.
Yeah, so it's a Jeep, right? So what we've done is typically on the Jeeps, everything's urethane bushing pivots and all that stuff. So we did billet aluminum all in the factory locations with uniballs. And there's this big thing against uniballs, and they make noise and clunk, which they don't, because we use FK made in the United States. There's definitely made overseas cheaper stuff. But then we have the Camberg bump stops on it and the King shocks. And it's the right amount of lift. It's not too high. It's a few inches over a stock Rubicon on 37-inch tires. But it's the control of bypass shocks, right? And it's the tuning of bypass shocks that really make a big difference. And then having tremendous bottom out control with bump stops. So front and rear bump stops. And what's cool about it is Jeeps are 1-to-1 on the suspension. So they don't require a lot of spring and they don't require a lot of valving, but they're also upset very quickly because they don't require a lot of spring and a lot of valving. So it's a good balance. So it's going to be fun after you get back to hear the story of what you think.
Heck yeah, I'm in.
So, Brad, why don't you tell us a little bit about how people can learn more about your adventures, whether it's on your YouTube channel or your other socials?
Yeah, so TrailRecon on YouTube is primary where we post most of our stuff, but we also at TrailRecon on Instagram, and we also have an amazing Facebook group where there's a huge community of people posting their adventures on there. You can join that, maybe connect with some other folks and see what everybody else is out there doing.
And you can find out more about my personal adventures at Oxidizer on Instagram.
And I'm Jerry Zayden, and all my social channels are at Jerry Zayden. And for more information on the show, you can find us at YouTube at magnaflow TV or all other social channels at magnaflow. This has been the MF Show.